This naturalrefrigerants.com article is being read by an automated voice. ATMO America, NRDC scientist invites industry, help to enact California's PFAS bill, by Michael Gary. Published June 27, 2025. California's Senate Bill 682, which would eventually prohibit the sale and distribution of products that contain intentionally added PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, including many F-gas uses in 2035, is facing fierce opposition from the chemical industry, according to Anna Reed, Senior Scientist and Director of PFAS Advocacy at the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC. Reed shared this assessment during a panel discussion on PFAS at the Atmosphere America Summit 2025, held June 11th and 12th in Atlanta, Georgia. The conference was organized by Atmosphere, publisher of naturalrefrigerants.com. Representing NRDC, a U.S.-based environmental advocacy group, she is working with the California legislature on passing Senate Bill 682. "We are currently in the middle of this process, so I can't tell you what this bill will look like by the end," said Reed. "But I have never seen industry opposition quite like this in my career." However, Reed added that she was encouraged by the support for natural refrigerant alternatives to PFAS refrigerants evident at the ATMO America conference. It left her a little bit surprised at the state of the refrigerants community and what is possible because that is not the picture being painted currently in California. She encouraged attendees to get involved and round out that discussion in the California legislature regarding the bill to ensure that it is more accurate. Interested stakeholders can contact her at nrdcinfo@nrdc.org. California State Senator Ben Allen, Democrat, Senate District 24, introduced the SB 682 PFAS bill on February 21st. Last month, it was approved by the Senate Committees on Health and Appropriations, and on June 9th was referred to the Assembly Committee on Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials. Reid called it a science-based, common-sense approach to phasing out unnecessary uses of PFAS as a class. If enacted, the bill would be one of the most aggressive regulations on PFAS pollution in the U.S., along with regulations set by Maine and Minnesota. "We really want to reduce people's exposures to PFAS as quickly as possible, but we can't rely on cleanup," said Reed. "We really do need to turn off the tap on PFAS pollution as much as possible." PFAS, which include more than 10,000 substances, are known as forever chemicals for their persistence and durability. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, established drinking water regulations for some PFAS last year and declared two long-chain PFAS, perfluorooctanoic acid, PFOA, and perfluorooctansulfonic acid, PFOS, to be hazardous chemicals. PFOA and PFOS have been linked to a number of adverse health impacts, including certain cancers, reproductive issues, developmental problems, and immune system effects. The EPA under the second Trump administration appears to be reassessing its approach to PFAS regulation. Addressing PFAS as a class. California's SB 682 would address PFAS as a class, rather than in the piecemeal fashion that has characterized many state and federal PFAS regulations to date. Just from a logistical point of view, it's actually impossible for us as scientists to study an individual chemical and regulate individual chemicals one at a time in this class and get anywhere in a reasonable time frame, especially when doing it one at a time encourages regrettable substitutions, said Reed. California is one of at least 23 states that use the at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom definition that includes F-gases and TFA and correlates to the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, definition recently defended by a group of PFAS scientists. The EPA does not use this definition. Reed noted that in the U.S., there have been multiple efforts at the state level, some successful, to redefine PFAS to exclude F-gases from regulations, either by changing the definition of PFAS or through an outright exemption. The easiest way to get out of the class-based approach is not be considered a PFAS at all, she said, adding, "We really need to leave the definition of PFAS based in science." SB 682 would begin taking effect January 1st, 2027 with the ban of targeted PFAS-containing products such as cleaning products, cookware, dental floss, juvenile products, food packaging, and ski wax. But then starting January 1st, 2035, it would more broadly prohibit the sale and distribution of any other product that contains intentionally added PFAS unless the department has made a determination that the use of PFAS in the product is a currently unavoidable use, the prohibition is preempted by federal law, or the product is previously used. The 2035 prohibition would cover most uses of F gases, such as HFO 1234YF and HFO 1234ZEE in new HVAC and R equipment, as well as trifluoroacetic acid, TFA, an atmospheric byproduct of certain F gases, notably HFO 1234YF, which undergoes 100% conversion to TFA in a few weeks. TFA, which has been found in human blood, is considered a potentially harmful chemical and is linked to reproductive toxicity. There have been competing contentions about the potential toxicity of TFA made by the fluorochemical industry, which refers to a 2020 assessment report by the UN Environment Program that says TFA is unlikely to cause adverse effects in terrestrial and aquatic organisms. Other refrigerants banned in 2040. Beginning January 1, 2040, SB 682 would prohibit sales and distribution of certain PFAS refrigerant uses, excluded from the 2035 bans: refrigeration below -50 degrees Celsius, -58 degrees Fahrenheit, laboratory test and measurement equipment, and a refrigerated centrifuge. The 2040 ban would also cover fluorinated gases used for the maintenance and refilling of installed HVAC and R equipment. The 2040 prohibitions target refrigerant uses identified by the EU in its consideration of PFAS regulations to need a longer time to transition, said Reed. These uses may also be exempted if the use of PFAS in the product is currently unavoidable, the prohibition is preempted by federal law, or the product is previously used. The latest version of the bill includes a provision for both 2035 and 2040 that prohibits products that contain an intentionally added PFAS that is water-soluble, may decompose into PFAS that is water-soluble, or may release PFAS that is water-soluble. Refrigerants such as HFO 1234YF are partially soluble in water, and HFO 123YF that leaks into the atmosphere decomposes fully into TFA, which is 100% water-soluble. Reed underscored that, apart from the 2040 exceptions, all other uses of refrigerants that are PFAS would be subject to the 2035 phase-out, unless a manufacturer applies for and is granted a 6-year currently avoidable use exemption, said Reed. Manufacturers can petition for the exemption as long as they meet all 3 essential use criteria, she added. We're also allowing for renewals, as long as those manufacturers have shown some sort of significant effort to find a safer alternative. The theory behind the 3 essential use criteria was created for the Montreal Protocol. For PFAS, the first is that there's no safer available alternatives to the PFAS. The next is that the function of the PFAS is actually necessary for the product to work. We don't actually need stain-resistant pants, we just need pants, said Reed. Finally, the use of PFAS in the product is critical for the health, safety, or functioning of society. If any of the 3 are false, the use of PFAS would be considered non-essential, she noted. Last year, California's legislature considered a bill, SB 903, that was similar to SB 682 but was not passed, in part because of costs. In 2022, California enacted PFAS regulations with a narrower scope, AB 1817 and AB 2771, which banned sale and distribution of PFAS-containing textile articles and cosmetic products, respectively, beginning January 1, 2025. SB 903 also faced considerable chemical industry opposition. To counter that, proponents of SB 682 have obtained the support of the American Sustainable Business Network, ASBN, and the California Association of Sanitation Agencies. As the most populous U.S. state with more than 39 million residents, California has an outsized impact on the U.S. economy, and its environmental regulations are often viewed as a standard for other states to emulate. In 2020, California finalized ambitious HFC regulations that limit many new applications to a 100-year GWP of 150. It updated the regulations in 2022. How harmful is TFA? Rada, who has a PhD in developmental biology from the University of California, San Francisco, pointed out that there is initial evidence for liver, immune, developmental, and reproductive effects for ultra-short-chain PFAS like TFA and PFPRA, perfluoropropionic acid. In answer to a question about whether TFA can be harmful if, unlike long-chain PFAS, it has low bioaccumulation tendencies in human organs, though it is found to persist in the blood, she replied, "The problem is that there is a lot of TFA all around us all the time, and so we're being chronically exposed. What we found out is when you expose animals to long-term chronic exposure, that we find the same health effects as the long-chain PFAS. So the absence of bioaccumulation is not actually a protective factor anymore." Reed acknowledged that the initial animal studies on TFA are no guarantee that it is toxic to humans. Nonetheless, she said, they are concerning. "We've never really come across a PFAS that we have studied well that has been shown to be safe," she said. "So the question is whether or not we decide that just because we don't have enough studies that we should just ignore the problem. I think eventually, policy-wise, we'd like to get past waiting till there's proof of harm in the population before we do something."